Hey yo, a cat is in, born under the TI-333 star sign. Let's find out what's happening here. I like anime. And this title reads, "This will destroy anime and must be stopped." By Ref says this. I like anime, so I hope they don't destroy anime.
Hey, what's up guys, Ref here. So I'm sure a lot of you are aware of the various threats that might impact the quality of anime and manga as it is produced and released overseas. We are aware of things like poor localizations and bad translations, other quality control issues that might impact the quality of anime and manga as it goes out to Western markets. But there is a new push that is even more concerning, and that is a lot of pressure being exerted on Japanese studios to create and appeal their content towards a global audience with different standards than they are used to. All of these threats are...
I love the global approach, right? Like globalism. Oh yeah, let's go. Just maybe not under the leadership of the West. You know what I mean? It's gonna be together.
Something that are very real when it comes to anime and manga and their quality, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to start with this article recently released saying, Disney Plus Japan Executive admits anime industry making a shift towards more acceptable expressions in order to appeal to wider audiences. And anytime you see this language about a wider or global audience, you should be concerned, because in the past we would have to wait for localizations to really make the impact of how to censor and alter content coming out of Japan. But at this point, we've reached now, they are targeting the studios themselves. There's
good point.
Pressure being put on these studios at the ground level to make their work with an initial focus on these global audiences and global standards, and that should concern you greatly. Now, before we get into this article, I want to share a little Mother's Day weekend advanced GG bundle available for you guys. So in this bundle, you can purchase an ice shaker.
Cute. I would still say check out Mark Hyman for like the good food and stuff, but you know what I mean? That's some pretty stuff.
So moving back to this article, Disney Plus Japan Executive admits anime industry making a shift towards more acceptable expressions in order to appeal to wider audiences. Now, anytime you see this phrase wider or global audiences, you should already be concerned. And a lot
of anime is very niche focused, right? Like it's the product that tries to cater to everyone, and it does this by being hyper specific in each case, or in most cases, right?
Disney going to do with these titles. A lot of people are concerned that they might censor or alter them, and of course now we can cite this global or wider audience is one of the justifications they might use to alter these broadcasts. Now, also, I will point out this shift towards more acceptable expressions is a wild phrase. Okay, it's always people who are the most virtuitous who try to come up with these wacky phrases that honestly are pretty offensive at their core. They're basically saying what's going on in Japanese media is somehow problematic and needs to be adjusted for a wider audience, aka...
First off, it's a relative statement. Anime could already be perfect as it is, but somebody could say, let's make it more perfect, right? This statement is, it's a nothing burger. It's written so that to make nobody feel offended. And as Ashley Frawley with Sublation Media would say, it's about getting passive assent, right? You just want to get the thing past people's radars, and so they don't complain, and so they can just do whatever they want, right? It's about getting past people's radar. So you don't need to overthink these kind of statements, but they exist to trick you into shutting up, right? Like that's part of the deal here. So you might want to make your voice heard and just be like, call it out for what it is. It's a trick.
The rest of the world, or the Western sphere, right? And that's a pretty offensive thing to say. This is the type of virtue.
I'm going to get offended, but again, it's an attempt to trick you into not worrying about it. It's like, oh, we are nice people here. There's nothing to see here.
Signaling white savior type stuff you see on social media, but unfortunately now it is bled into companies like Disney Plus and Japanese studios, by the way. But continuing on into the article, it says this, and finally giving...
Disney has been taking so many L's that they better be on their best behavior and don't try to pull this stuff, right? So maybe it's important to build institutions that steer the conversation in a way that you actually want. But I tend to say, like, just get ahead for yourself, and then when you got some resource to spare, you know, you can do some more long-term investing in a real sense, not just put money in a stock market, no, but you can actually invest in a project to steer the public conversation. Right? You want to be a little more proactive, ultimately, I think. This has some intricate linking to freedom of speech, not just in the artistic sense, but also this stuff is a boogeyman, like one side or the other, you're going to fight, and then legislation gets passed that really screws over people as they just try to make a living, or people as they want to have a country that doesn't pay for bombs all over the place, right? So in a way, it's a distraction too.
Confirmation to the bitter truth that many fans of the medium already knew. Disney Plus Japan boss Takuto Yawata has admitted that the wider anime industry is actively attempting to change its core identity in an attempt to make the medium more appealing to global audiences, particularly those located in the Western world. Now, here is the problem with having such a focus on westernizing and making anime more appropriate for a global audience. It is taking away the identity of anime. Anime is different. It is unique. And that is the reason a lot of people over the decades have gravitated towards anime and manga as opposed to traditional Western media.
Anime is very much a medium that caters to everyone already by being hyper-specific in each individual project, right? So the core DNA, so to speak, of anime is in a way incompatible with standardizing, right? Like each and every anime caters to one particular audience, one specific niche. It's very specific in its universality, right? Like anime already has a universal appeal. And so the way I look at this, I feel like Disney Plus is just gonna create completely unwatchable shows because they don't know what they're doing with the medium.
Anime and manga is something different. It looks different. It feels different. It is just something that is refreshing for a lot of people, and that is the appeal. That is why a lot of people have gravitated towards those Japanese mediums, because it's something different. So when you're trying to globalize and westernize...
And it has that whole a thing for everyone kind of universalism, right?
Anime and manga.
Like everyone can make their dreams come true, at least in anime.
You are taking away what makes it unique. If these people want to make these Western-styled products, then go make them. You don't have to take existing mediums and change them or try to change them at their core, which is happening with a lot of these Japanese studios, in order to create new Western media or something for a global audience. Make something separate. Don't change something that is good, something that is different, to become just like everything else. But continuing...
Yeah, they don't really know what they're dealing with here, right?
Moving on, we've seen Capcom do this very recently. We talked about this in a recent video. They talked about their localization process and their goals. And we saw this language down here about a good localization makes players feel right at home wherever in the world they are. And I don't know about you guys, I don't want to feel at home when I'm watching anime or manga or playing a Japanese video game. I don't want to feel at home. If I wanted to feel at home, I would look out for more Western style.
Maybe they had some DEI person just hired because it's part of the of the deal. If you want to do business in the West, you gotta get the DEI person if you're a big company. So
pieces of media. I don't want to feel at home when I'm watching the latest magical girl anime. I don't want it to relate to me. It's not supposed to relate to me, and it's very, very, I think honestly backwards to try to do this. Again, it's some sort of complex.
But you are a vampire girl on the internet, right? Or whatever, right? So
where they feel like anything going on in the Japanese media is just cannot be understood by these Western viewers, and it's very silly to tailor everything to these people who probably don't have much of an interest in it in the first place. But moving on in the article, here's the next part, in quotes from the executive saying, "What has changed compared to 10 years ago is that we used to think of the business as a set of videograms and TV broadcasts. And we used to make works for people who could buy videograms," he explained. "We were making films for people who could buy videograms. Videograms are still around today, of course, but streaming distribution has become more common, and
I don't understand what is a videogram.
Target audience is no longer limited to the domestic market. The rise of streaming distribution is why it spread globally. It is playing a very large role."
Is it like a video program, like a video game, or what kind of translation is this? What are we talking about?
As a communication tool for users around the world, and I believe that Japanese animation is still in the process of evolving. Of course, everything is in the process of evolving, but at what point does this evolution become just an inherent change at the core? And that's what it seems like with all of these.
Hey, if it changes at the core, nobody gonna buy it. It's a problem that solves itself. And the people who wanna make the good stories, well, it's tricky. Because Japan, they do have the system of manga writing and editing. The editor is like actually quite involved in helping make the story more enticing, right?
Pushes. It seems like a push to change.
Also visual novels, and I mean, they have been struggling. And everyone seems to make a mobile game nowadays who used to make a visual novel. So, I mean, it is what it is. I wonder how that's gonna go. I'm at the very least curious. I'm not really worried. I feel like, you know, they'll always figure something out in that space.
Change these forms of Japanese media at their core so they are immediately appealing to a global audience. They don't even have to wait for the localizations to change something. They want it changed right at the start. And that should concern you. And again, this idea that streaming distribution helped bring anime out into the forefront on a global audience. Well, that is true, but that doesn't mean it now has to change itself for that global audience. It reached out and expanded into a global audience because people found it endearing. They found it interesting, something different. That's why they liked anime and manga. Now you want to turn around and change it to be just...
It's about Disney dropping the ball. I feel like that was one of the biggest openings. And so now they're trying to buy up the competition. It's like, I mean, that's a classic move, but also a jerk move. Come on. And the streaming providers, they were around for a long time, right? Like, don't forget about that. Crunchyroll, they've been around for 5+ years. Probably like 10, right? I mean, I've been around.
Just like everything else on the global market, which takes away from the uniqueness of this various examples of Japanese media. And we've seen studios like Kadokawa totally embrace this. It's been going on for years. This is nothing new. They have made it very clear in public statements that they have an overseas first policy when it comes to creating their products. And we've seen some of the results in many different forms, but the most recent one was the ReZero Season 3 teaser that featured a lot of censorship of various outfits from the manga as opposed to the new anime trailer here. And before, you know, the weirdos on Twitter say something, they're like, aha, see, they censored the outfits, they gotcha. Well, okay, well, they're still pretty exposed. But the fact that they felt it necessary to censor these at all in the first place is exactly why this push for a global audience is something that is actually having an impact. And we saw that reflected in the comments of the character designer for ReZero Season 3 saying, this isn't limited to ReZero, but in order to deliver to many countries, there are broadcast codes for each country, and in order to reach many people, the people on the set are working hard to deliver the best possible content within the many restrictions. And that is something that probably confuses some people because
what a headache.
There's multiple layers of issues here, but they seem very intertwined. So on the one hand, you have these like moral attempts at censorship where companies are being pressured into changing these things because outside forces are telling them X, Y, and Z is bad and you should change that. And then there's regulatory requirements that are also exerting censorship and also making some studios impose self-censorship to avoid getting their broadcast cut off in certain regions of the world. Now, if those things sound similar, it's because they are. They're very intertwined. It's all about morality, and whether it's in code or just spoken as a office directive, these things.
It's all about morality. That's a weird way to put it. I think it's all about the morality police, which is not morality, right? It's just like cheap to throw some money at people, get people busy with each other. So, I mean, what is it? Bread and circuses is one way to call it, but a little more subtle. A little more subtle. You want that plausible deniability.
These are all aimed at censoring Japanese media.
But, like, morality is awesome, right? Like, you have morality, I have morality, we all have morality. And it's like, it can be quite different. And sometimes it need updating, right? But we do this through dialogue and freedom of speech, right? That's where freedom of speech come in again. Pretty nice to have, actually.
That these global audiences are finding morally offensive or what have you. Now, moving forward in the article, we get the main quote here. So it says, in turn, the Disney executive opined, I don't think there's been...
And hey, I mean, if they think they can make more money by enforcing certain moral standards, then I mean, good for them. But I don't think that's what's going on here. Anyway.
Any major shift, the fundamental storytelling, the precision of the action is not changed. but there may have been a shift towards adopting more acceptable expressions. Like I said earlier in the video, the idea of an acceptable expression is offensive on its face. It is saying blatantly that whatever this Japanese media is, in whatever form it is, there has to be some sort of an acceptable expression that is shared to the rest of the world. That this needs to be censored and altered in ways to remove all of these icky things coming out of this Japanese media.
And it's funny, like, they say that they want to make it more like, oh, for everyone. But at the same time, what they're doing is they make it, oh, like, more for everyone to get mad at each other, right? That's what they are actually doing, right? It's like a paradox in a way.
That the global audience would never accept. And that is very offensive. And it's a moral grandstanding point. And we've seen this also with payment.
Yeah, but Disney doesn't do moral grandstanding, right? I mean, they just don't want to get bothered by whoever put the ESG thing together. They don't want to get bothered by the people who they are trying to trick into passively assenting. And so they don't, I mean, yeah, if you want to call it moral grandstanding, to say good things are good. We like good things. And so we make this less bad. And so we make it better. It's like, that's the good things. We like the good things. It's like, it's not grandstanding because it's pathetic.
Processors.
And I don't think that Disney's going to get away with this in any big way. People complain a bit and they stop and be like, yeah, maybe we don't do this stuff so much. And it's like, yeah, maybe in 5 years, maybe 10 years again, we can do something like this again. It's like, you know, it's just going to keep happening. I told you about stairs. It keeps happening.
We've talked about that in the past, where it seems like MasterCard and Visa, they clamp down the hardest on Japanese companies, whether it's art platforms or studios, what have you. They pull their services and threaten these companies unless they remove typically not safe for work content or just generally lewd content. And it seems like they clamp down the hardest on Japanese companies. And when it comes to Western counterparts, they are left alone. And it seems very, very strange. There seems to be a moral crusade against really, I was going to say Japanese companies. It's really Japanese media and Japanese culture as a whole. And I think it's totally masked off at this point. I don't think anyone is trying to hide it, and it's becoming a real issue.
And there could be something of that going on too.
Now, moving on from that.
Like, wasn't there like a satanic panic or something back in the day? Although I guess that was also about Pokemon, so... I mean, looking back, there was some crazy stuff happening in the US, right?
Article. I also saw this. Just really quickly want to share this. So, Disney Plus, Hulu, and Max will be offered in a new package bundle this summer in the US. Disney and Warner Bros. Discovery has announced. So here's the thing. It's starting to sound like, what's that thing? Cable TV. At this point, there are so many bundles like this. It's starting to sound like it's all going back to the fundamentals of cable TV with all these networks.
Yeah, alrighty. That was a strange ride. That he's coming around to recognizing just how crappy AI can be, and it tends to be like, yeah, it can be a tool, but besides that, it increasingly makes me think of a malfunctioning Google search. Meow. Anyway, leave this guy a like, rate, comment, share. Think about sharing. Same thing over here. I will link the video below. I hope you have a good one. Stay safe out there, and maybe we can meet again. Would be nice.